Now, I know you might be fresh out of your graduation and you're ready to get into the industry. You start a business, you file the paperwork, you get an LLC. Maybe you name it after yourself, John Smith Mental Performance LLC, or use some cliche psychology term like Max Mindset LLC. Feel free to use that. I know Mind Body One, that might be on the nose too, but the point is you built the business technically on paper, but did you build the brand? Now, what does it even mean? What's the difference? So in this episode 7 of Industry Pathology, I want to take a look at how we can make sure we don't fall victim to what I'm going to call a diagnosis of Pre-LLC disease, or better known as name on the door syndrome. Now, I usually do the diagnosis at the end, but I wanted to do something different this time around. So think about the term Pre-LLC disease. Now, Pre-LLC meaning you're ready to get into business from the legal ramifications of incorporating. Now, this is not going to go into the actual legal part because there's LLC, there's sole proprietorship. That depends on what you're trying to do and how you want to structure a company for future revenue building or people you're going to bring on, which we can talk about in other episodes, but not today. But I want to look at more so is why are you doing the LLC right now? Because do you have a business model? Oh, what does that mean? Or a business plan? That's something completely different. Or a business strategy? These are 3 different terms that do different things. But how many of them are you familiar with? And if you are familiar with, do you know how to build it? Or do you even have one to put into practice right now? Do you know what a blue ocean strategy is? Do you know what a red ocean strategy is? These are very key things to understand when you're trying to build something up, because one of the biggest pitfalls in the industry is that we think that mental skills is what we're selling. Nah, you got it all wrong, because it's like I said in past videos, it's like when McDonald's was in the real estate business, not the burger business. It's the same thing. We're not in the mental skills business. We're in the reducing stress, increasing performance, finding solutions for a population or demographic to do better at what they need to do. Now, how can that look? Many different ways, but you need to figure out how to structure that into a system where you can repetitiously implement throughout demographics, places, people, business partners, associates, whoever, so it can continuously be replicated. Because if it falls to the point where it's only you sitting down in a one-on-one like this, talking to a client, yeah, that is a business model. It's called direct to consumer or direct to client or B2C, business to client, but all means the same thing. It's one service being rendered to one person. Pretty straightforward. And that's how a lot of businesses go. But what about business to business? Are you working with other organizations to provide services for them to utilize? Or we have things like SaaS, software as a service, where you build a product where they can use the software, the tool, the app, the chatbot, whatever it is, so it can be used without your involvement, but you sell it to them for a subscription fee or some kind of yearly payment. But the point is, however you implement these business strategies is going to be key to how you make revenue. And hold up, what's your revenue looking like? Because we're talking about LLCs. The whole point is that is so when you file for taxes, it's under this type of established business. But are you even going to be making any money? Now, we can be zealous to say, hey, I got this degree. I need to make money back to pay for all this money I took out for business loans, etc. But in actuality, it's not going to go that way. And it's not me trying to downplay it, because most people, if they go into this field, is usually contracting with another organization, either through a military organization or with a sports team. And they're probably just doing their own consulting on the side as either supplemental or part-time work. Very few people go straight into full-time work or have that even connections to do so fresh out. So this is why we got to pump the brakes a little bit, and going back to what I said about building the brand. So when I go to this is, what exactly are you selling? What is your target population? Now, I don't mean just sport. A lot of people say sport because obviously your degree's in sports psychology, but you need to make sure not only is it sport, but what sector of sport or what type of performers. That can vary across different sports, but be the same type of performer. Now, let me make that make sense. So I had an intern a few years ago who really wanted to work with MMA or female MMA athletes. And that's great. It's a population that definitely doesn't get a lot of attention. And that's a gift and a curse, because while it doesn't get a lot of attention, meaning that the competition pool will be small, but also means so will your possible client. MMA as itself, as someone who's worked with hundreds of mixed martial artists, I can speak to this, but segmenting even lower to women, I told her, I said, you need to find, yeah, that's your niche, but you need to find a greater population. And when she tried to pick my brain about how, I told her, stop thinking sport in general. Think about what type of solutions do you want to find? So let's say you want to be the person who's known as the one who can give micro bite-sized lessons to be able to implement real-time strategies to help someone's performance. You might do this through a quick 20-minute Zoom call that you do once a week, and you give them maybe a curated workbook to go along with it, and that's the service you offer. It limits the time you spend doing direct to service, but also has some standalone items. In this case, it's a tool, not software, the workbook, so they can follow along and follow. And once you make the workbook on the front end, there's more work, but on the back end, you just keep putting it out and just selling it. You see what I'm saying there? Did you think about that? I have interns under me who I say, hey, Mind Body One has a lot of resources. Make a mini course. It doesn't have to be something full-fledged, but make a short, maybe course that lasts about an hour or two. We can sell it for $49.99. I'm just using mock prices. And there you go. You got a revenue stream through us, and now you can make money. But these are things we don't get taught a lot in the educational system in the sport and performance psychology world. But this is usually ways to make revenue beyond just trying to book a bunch of clients. Because if you do the mathematics, let's say you do want to make it mostly through direct to client, doing one-on-one sessions. Imagine how much hours a day, not only do you have to book, but you have to be able to get these clients. And once you get these clients, you have to serve them. So it's on so much time in a day, and that can be mentally and physically draining. But going back to the whole marketing side of it, where do you get these clients? Most people don't care about you being able to do some box breathing drills or some visualization techniques. These are just tools. Imagine, let's use the fitness industry because it's always a great parallel. Imagine we go to a gym and someone's looking to get training from you, and you say, hey, we have really good dumbbells. These dumbbells are some of the best in the world. While that's cool and all, what does that really do for the client? Because a 20-pound dumbbell, whether it's from the highest brand or the lowest brand, still weighs 20 pounds. Now, you might argue that presentation is everything, and that might play a factor depending on the type of client they are. But for the most part, this goes back to me saying you sell solutions. How will you get them to get stronger in the case of fitness? But in this case, how do you get them mentally tougher? How do you get them to look at different unseen events as something they can overcome versus something they can falter to? Your implementation goes beyond just those skills. You have to sell them a brand. I'll give you an anecdote. When I used to sell tires at Sears Auto back in the early 2010s, about 2011, 2012, I did this. And this job taught me so much. And I actually was doing coursework and mental health counseling at Barry University. And I was reading my books while I was in between clients coming up to get their cars fixed. Now, I don't know that much about cars. I knew just enough to sell tires, brake pads, oil changes, things like that. But I was not a mechanic by any means, but I'm a pretty smart guy. But what I learned there was how to be able to sell something and go beyond just the product. Because if you come to my shop and you want tires, it's pretty straightforward. What do I really need to say? But did everyone come through buy tires? Or did they buy the best brand to get me better commission? No, but that was predicated on how I presented it. For example, we buy things with emotion. We don't just say, hey, I need this, go. If that was the case, the shopping centers, the malls, the grocery stores wouldn't be packed all the time. People buy with what they feel. So you have to get them to feel something. And being that you're in the psychology realm, it's surprised that more people don't do this or know this. But going back to the tires. So if I notice a person who had a child seat in their car, I would use the factor of, what strikes on emotion to a parent more than anything, making sure their children are safe. And as a parent myself, this makes a lot of sense. So if I know that, your tires are balding, that's a fact. They need new tires. But to make the pressing issue, you want to make sure you have the safest conditions when you're driving. You would never want something unfortunate to happen because your tires weren't at the best to their abilities. This invoked that response and a little bit of fear, but it wasn't meant to be overwhelming. You got to do the same thing with the potential clients. Why should they work with you? Not because you can get them better at their sport or better at their job or whatever it is. It's because you can invoke something emotionally in them. Hey, I work with numerous athletes like this, being a former athlete myself, and I notice every time someone's in this struggle, it always comes down to X. I need to be able to get you to overcome X. This is how I do it. Now, the factors go into this, and then you present them different options, and then you present your pricing, and then they go from there, because you never want to say, hey, I don't know what I want to do. You figure it out. Never give the client or the potential client that opportunity. These are things you need to think about when you make your LLC, because if we go strictly into, I got a business, buy something from me, book a one-on-one session, book a free consult, a lot of time gets thrown out the door. A lot of time gets wasted. So this is not meant to be an end all, be all, or exhaustive list of understanding why you should go into the branding and the building of where you're trying to go with your company before building an LLC. It's fine getting an LLC. That's not what I'm saying. But it's key to understand, what exactly are you selling? Who are you selling to? How will you go about it? What are your mediums? What is your projected revenue? This is something important. I've asked so many people this question, and they'll pitter patter around it and try to give me some grandiose number that in my mind is still too low. I'm being real. We do not charge enough in this industry. Even myself, I'm like, I could do better. It's not necessarily saying I need to make everything in the world, but there is a market share, and who should it go to? So you need to make sure that you're doing what you need to do, get a piece of that market share. This is not some game you just hopefully falls in. Imagine that you talk to your clients, you tell them, well, I hope you win, try your best. Great, but don't you want to give them strategies to help them do that? You need to do the same thing with your business. This is not just a guessing game. You got to make it happen and put it in the same perspective. And it's a competition. End of the day, you have to be competitive and understand how to do what's needing to be done. So don't fall victim to pre-LLC disease or name on the door syndrome, because you own it, you're the one in charge, doesn't mean it's doing anything. So take that what you will. And that's my pathology.